All right, so get this. We're diving deep into undercover police work in New York City's Chinatown.
Oh, yeah.
And the source material is intense. I mean, it's more intense than any TV show I've
It
seen.
really is.
We're talking about a retired Sergeant Steve Lee who went deep undercover, infiltrating some of the most dangerous gangs, in the city.
Yeah. His story is just incredible. It's raw,
Yeah.
a firsthand account of the risks these officers take, the constant paranoia, and the moral dilemmas they face.
Yeah, it's not just catching criminals, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to untangle this whole web of loyalty, betrayal, and corruption
Absolutely.
that reaches the highest levels.
Yeah. And to really understand what Sergeant Lee was up against,
Right.
we need to start with the story he tells about a murder.
Okay.
Picture this, a suitcase dumped in the middle of Chinatown.
Oh, wow.
And when the police open, well, let's just say it wasn't pretty.
Oh, gosh.
The victim had been dismembered, and the brutality of it just sent shockwaves through the community.
Yeah.
I mean, for Lee, it was a chilling reminder of the stakes of his operation.
Yeah, so like setting the stage for us.
Yeah, Lee.
This was serious business.
This wasn't just a random act of violence.
Right.
It was a message, a brutal display of power in the ongoing turf wars between Chinatown's gangs.
Yeah.
It sets the stage for the kind of world Lee was operating in.
So let's paint a picture of Chinatown's underworld for our listeners.
Yeah.
Sergeant Lee was up against 3 major players, each with their own slice of the criminal pie, right?
Right.
Drugs, prostitution, even transportation.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not just talking about some, back alley dealings here.
No.
These gangs had their tentacles everywhere.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't even think twice about hopping on one of those dollar vans or intergirl buses,
Yeah.
shuttling people around.
Right.
But those were often controlled by these very gangs.
Wow.
It shows just how deeply ingrained they were in the community operating in plain sight.
So they were really embedded, like part of the fabric of the community.
Absolutely.
Wow. And that's where Jimmy comes in?
Gimme.
The karaoke kingpin.
Yeah, the karaoke kingpin.
Turns out those karaoke bars weren't just for off-key singing.
No, they weren't.
Jimmy was a central figure in all of this,
Right.
running several karaoke joints that served as fronts for all sorts of illegal activities.
Yeah, it was a brilliant strategy, really.
Yeah.
Karaoke bars are social hubs,
Yeah.
drawing in crowds and providing the perfect cover for drug deals, prostitution, and who knows what else.
Wow.
And Jimmy's connections were deep,
Oh, yeah?
especially with the notorious Fujianese gangs involved in the Chinatown bus wars.
Oh, wow.
These guys were ruthless, battling it out for control of those lucrative transportation routes.
So it's like a bus war.
A bus war.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So here's Sergeant Lee walking this tightrope,
Right.
undercover and alone.
By himself.
Couldn't trust anyone he talks about. Having to constantly delete everything from his phone.
Oh, yeah.
Living with this just gnawing paranoia that his cover could be blown at any moment.
Imagine that psychological strain, the isolation, the fear, always looking over your shoulder.
Yeah, I can't even imagine.
It takes an incredible toll.
And it's not just theoretical danger.
Right.
There's one incident where he almost gets exposed.
Oh, really?
He's called into a meeting with a lieutenant, and this guy immediately demands to see his phone.
No.
Oh,
God.
starts checking his calls and messages.
Oh, wow. Talk about a close call.
That must have been terrifying.
I can't even imagine.
It shows how fragile this undercover work is.
Yeah.
One slip up and it's over.
Right. One slip up could have disastrous consequences.
Luckily, his paranoia had paid off.
Right.
And he'd already deleted anything incriminating.
Mm-hmm.
But it really made him realize how vulnerable he was.
Yeah.
How anyone could be watching, even within the police force.
Yeah, and as it turns out, his gut feeling was right.
Yeah.
Throughout his investigation, he kept getting these cryptic warnings about leaks within the department.
Oh, wow. So there were leaks from the inside?
Yeah. That chief's driver, an internal affairs officer, even a mysterious friend in the Queen's office.
Oh, my God.
They all seem to know more than they should.
Like, how does the Queen's office even get involved in this?
Right. It paints this disturbing picture of a system riddled with corruption.
Yeah.
Where information could be bought and sold, and loyalty was a fluid concept.
Yeah.
It makes you question who Lee could really rely on.
So it wasn't just criminals he had to worry about.
No.
It was like this whole other layer
Absolutely.
of, trying to figure out
Right.
who was playing him, who was feeding information to the gangs within the police force.
And the corruption went even deeper.
Oh, gosh.
Lee uncovered cases where high-ranking officials were caught red-handed taking bribes,
Yeah.
but they barely got a slap on the wrist.
Are you kidding?
No.
There's one example he gives about a borough commander caught accepting lavish gifts and favors.
Right. Dinners, all sorts of things.
Unbelievable.
Her case went to the ethics board, and what happened?
I don't even know what to guess at this point.
She got a minor reprimand and, wait for it, a promotion.
You're kidding me? A promotion?
A promotion?
So they rewarded her for corruption.
It seems that way.
That's unbelievable. I mean, you've got guys like Lee risking their lives,
Right.
while these officials in fancy offices are playing both sides and getting rewarded for it.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if the whole system is rigged.
Exactly. And that's the key question here, isn't it?
Yeah.
Did Sergeant Lee's efforts, all the risks he took, all the information he uncovered, did any of it actually make a difference?
Right, because what was the point of it all?
Exactly.
If the system is just going to keep rewarding these corrupt officials.
Yeah, it's a question that haunted him too.
Yeah.
He was deeply troubled by the hypocrisy he saw,
Yeah.
especially among the gangs who claimed to be helping their own community,
Yeah.
but were actually exploiting and preying on the very people they claimed to protect.
Right. Using it as a cover.
Right.
Wow.
He saw the devastating effects of their activities firsthand.
Yeah.
The families torn apart, the lives destroyed.
Yeah.
It fueled his determination to bring them down, even if it meant facing betrayal from all sides.
And that's what makes his story so gripping.
Yeah.
He could have walked away,
Right.
knowing the danger,
Knowing the corruption.
knowing the corruption he was up against.
Absolutely.
But he chose to stay in the fight,
He did.
to expose the truth, even if it meant sacrificing everything.
His story forces us to confront the uncomfortable realities of power and corruption.
Yeah.
And it makes us ask, how much are we willing to sacrifice for justice?
Right.
And what happens when the very people sworn to uphold the law are the ones undermining it?
It's a really important question and a tough one.
Yeah, it is.
And we're going to keep exploring that as we dive deeper into Sergeant Lee's story.
Absolutely.
So stay tuned.
Stay with us.
We'll be right back.
Yep. So we've established like the kind of pressure cooker Sergeant Lee was working in, right?
Yeah.
Alone, undercover, surrounded by criminals and corrupt cops.
Yeah, it was a tough situation.
Now let's dive into how he actually operated in that environment.
Right. Because it wasn't just about, brute force or busting down doors.
No, not at all.
This was a game of intelligence.
Right.
And Lee had to be incredibly strategic.
Yeah, always thinking several steps ahead.
Yeah, like a chess game almost.
Exactly. One of his key tools was wiretapping.
Oh, wow. So he was tapping into their communications.
He'd tap into the gang's communication networks,
Yeah.
essentially listening in on their conversations, piecing together their plans, and identifying the major players.
I can just picture it now, Lee in some, dimly lit
Right.
room, headphones on,
Yeah.
meticulously listening to hours of conversations.
Right, trying to decipher coded messages, slang,
Yeah.
and figure out who is who in this criminal underworld.
Wow, that sounds painstaking.
It was painstaking work, but absolutely crucial.
Yeah.
Those wiretaps gave him a window into the gang's operations, their hierarchies, their rivalries.
So it was really valuable
Well,
intelligence.
absolutely. But wiretaps alone weren't enough.
Right, he needed more.
Lee knew she needed eyes and ears on the ground. People within the community who could provide him with real-time intel.
So that's where his network of informants comes in.
Exactly.
These were individuals who, for various reasons, were willing to risk their own safety to provide Lee with information.
Right. And I imagine building that kind of trust was incredibly difficult,
Oh, yeah.
especially in a community where suspicion of law enforcement runs deep.
Yeah, you have to overcome a lot of barriers.
Absolutely. Lee had to convince these informants that he was different, that he genuinely wanted to dismantle the criminal networks that were hurting their community.
Yeah.
He had to offer them protection, assure them that their identities would be kept secret.
Right.
It was a delicate balancing act, a constant game of risk assessment.
And there were probably some ethical gray areas there too, right?
Oh, absolutely. He talks about befriending a bouncer at one of the karaoke bars
Right.
who would slip him information.
Wow.
Was that ethical? Was he crossing a line by getting close to someone involved in those activities?
That's a tough one.
It's a question that plagues a lot of undercover work.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. You're forced to operate in this gray area, constantly making judgment calls that would be considered questionable in almost any other context.
Right. You have to do what you have to do.
Exactly.
But in Lee's case, those connections were often the difference between success and failure.
Right.
And it wasn't like he was a rogue agent making these decisions on his own.
No, he had handlers, a lieutenant, and another officer who were supposed to be overseeing his every move,
Okay.
making sure he didn't go too far.
So there was some level of oversight.
Right. But even with that oversight, there were times when Lee had to think on his feet, improvise, and make decisions that could have blown his cover or put him in danger.
Oh, I bet he recounts one tense encounter with the chief's driver at a karaoke bar.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, talk about being in the lion's den.
Right. He had to deflect suspicion and maintain his persona, all while trying to extract information.
That takes some serious skill.
It takes incredible quick thinking and adaptability.
He was constantly scanning his surroundings, assessing threats, and adjusting his approach based on the situation.
Like he developed a sixth sense for danger.
In a way, he did undercover work, forces you to become hyper-aware.
Yeah.
You're constantly on edge looking for potential threats, anticipating the unexpected.
So you're always in survival mode.
Exactly. And it's not just about physical danger either.
Right. There's a psychological pressure, too.
There's this immense psychological pressure that comes with living a double life.
Yeah.
Constantly pretending to be someone. You're not hiding your true identity from everyone around you.
It's got to mess with your head.
It can really mess with your sense of self. You're inhabiting this world where truth and deception are constantly intertwined.
Yeah.
It's not hard to imagine the toll that takes on your mental well-being.
And we also forget that these undercover officers are human beings.
Right?
They have families, loved ones who are worrying about them, unaware of the dangers they face every day.
It's easy to romanticize the action and intrigue of undercover work. But Lee's story humanizes it. He reminds us of the personal sacrifices these officers make, the unseen scars they carry, and the toll it takes on their lives and relationships.
Yeah, it's a side we don't often see.
It's something we often overlook.
So we've seen the kind of environment Lee was operating in,
Right.
the strategies he used, the risks he took.
The incredible risks.
But the big question remains,
Yeah.
did all this sacrifice and danger, did it actually achieve anything?
Right. Did he actually make a difference?
Did he manage to bring those gangs down?
Or did the corruption he uncovered make it all for nothing?
That's what we're going to find out next as we delve into the results of his operation.
Right.
The impact it had on Chinatown's underworld and the lasting questions it raises about justice and accountability. So we've seen how Sergeant Lee operated, the incredible risks he took, the web of corruption he uncovered.
It's a wild story.
It really is. But now, the million-dollar question, did any of it make a difference?
Right.
Did he manage to bring down those gangs and disrupt their hold on Chinatown?
Well, the picture's complex.
Okay.
Lee's operation did lead to some significant arrests.
Okay.
Remember Jimmy, the karaoke kingpin?
Oh, yeah.
He ended up becoming a key witness for the prosecution and helped dismantle his own crew from the inside.
So that's a win, right?
Oh, yeah.
Taking down a major player like Jimmy must have sent shockwaves through the underworld.
Absolutely. Jimmy's cooperation likely had a ripple effect throughout Chinatown's criminal networks.
Yeah.
It would send a message that anyone, even those seemingly at the top,
Right.
could be brought down.
Wow.
Other gangs would have been looking over their shoulders wondering who they could trust.
Yeah, so that's a huge disruption.
Huge.
But what about the corrupt officials? Those leaking information and protecting the gangs?
Right.
Did they face any real consequences?
That's where the story takes a darker turn.
Uh-oh.
While the operation exposed the leaks and pointed fingers at specific individuals,
Yeah.
it seems that true accountability was elusive.
So they got away with it.
Pretty much, Lee mentions the borough commander who was caught accepting those lavish dinners and favors.
Yeah, unbelievable.
She got a slap on the wrist from the ethics board.
Right.
And then, get this, a promotion.
It's unbelievable. I mean, a promotion? Are you serious?
It's a stark example of how power can shield individuals from real consequences.
Yeah. It's like the system is protecting itself.
It certainly seems that way.
I mean, it left Sergeant Lee feeling deeply disillusioned,
Yeah.
questioning the very system he'd risked his life for.
And it makes you wonder if a borough commander was involved.
Right.
How high up did this corruption go?
That's a chilling thought.
It is.
And it raises questions about the effectiveness of the entire system.
Yeah.
If those in power are the ones protecting these criminal networks, what hope is there for real change?
It's a question that haunts this entire story.
Yeah.
But while Lee's operation might not have brought down the whole system, it did make a dent. It disrupted criminal activity, took down some key players, and exposed a level of corruption that many would prefer to keep hidden.
Right, so it wasn't a complete failure.
No, not at all.
And beyond the tangible results, there's the impact of Lee's story itself.
Right.
He chose to speak out, to expose the truth, even when it meant putting himself at risk. That takes incredible courage.
It really does. His story is a powerful reminder that even in the face of seemingly insurmountable obstacles,
Yeah,
individuals can make a difference, speaking truth to power, exposing corruption, shining a light on the darkest corners of our society.
yeah.
These acts can spark change, even if it's slow and incremental.
So what can we take away from all of this? What does Sergeant Lee's experience tell us about the fight for justice?
I think it tells us it's a fight that requires vigilance, persistence, and a willingness to challenge the status quo.
Yeah.
Lee's story is a call to action, a reminder that we can't simply accept things as they are. We have a responsibility to hold those in power accountable, to demand transparency, and to push for a system that truly serves justice, not just protects the powerful.
It's a heavy message, but also an inspiring one.
It is.
Sergeant Lee's story, as difficult as it is, leaves us with a sense of hope,
Yeah.
a belief that even in the darkest corners, there are individuals fighting for what's right, willing to risk everything to expose the truth, and that's something worth remembering.
Absolutely. It makes you wonder if you were in Lee's shoes, knowing the risks, the betrayals, the possibility that your efforts might be in vain.
Right.
Would you still have the courage to do what he did? That's something for all of us to ponder as we navigate our own lives and the challenges we face.
That's a question that'll stay with me for a long time, and thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the complex world of undercover police work, corruption, and the pursuit of justice.